I want to get your thoughts on Alabama. We mentioned them a little bit, but mostly in the context of like Saban programs reloading, a kind of a slightly different era of college football where guys did go to just wait, maybe redshirt even at Alabama because you're going to be developed to go to the NFL, probably play in the CFP in the 4-team era. And so I'm curious where you think they are right now and like exactly how uncomfortable life is for Kalen DeBoer, because it was a drop off from what we're expecting for Alabama. We've spent the offseason somehow at times relitigating whether or not they should have been the CFP. No, the committee made the right decision. That team was flawed and they had some really, really bad losses. So we talked about how kind of like Tuscaloosa was unprepared for those types of losses. Like it's been so long, even just since they lost that many games in the regular season. So I guess just kind of set the table for me about what the state of Alabama going into this season, Kalen DeBoer, year 2, what do we expect? And just like, how does that fan base feel after, their first year in the post-Saban world?
Yeah, I mean, start with last year, right? Like, I think you're right. Like, I don't think the playoff discourse is really wrong. Like, Alabama should not have been in the playoff. Like, I just think it's
Ben,
pretty simple.
Sorry, where did you go to college again?
That's right, Indiana.
Okay, just checking.
The graduate of a team that should have been in the playoff. But no, I mean, look, like if you're Alabama, like it's pretty simple. And I'd said this a lot about Ole Miss last year. I think it was the Florida loss, right?
Yep.
Or was it Kentucky? Yeah, Florida. I'm mixing up my Florida and Kentucky losses for Ole Miss over the last couple of years. But and same thing with South Carolina with a couple of games. Like, if you're Alabama, like don't lose to the worst Oklahoma team in a decade. Like it's just, it's things like that. So you start there and then you move forward and you look at what this season is. One, I don't think the sky's falling in the way that I think, some folks in Tuscaloosa might feel. And I get it. Like this is a crazy dynamic and a crazy consistency for a program for, 15, 20 years at this point with Saban, being in the mix for a national championship every year. First of all, like that's not normal, right? Like there's a reason he's one of the 3 best, if not the best coach in the country forever, basically, and one of the best coaches in the history of college football. But I think look, Alabama's still super talented. Like they've recruited well. They've signed some guys that I think are going to make a difference. Like we'll see what happens at quarterback. Like Jalen Milroe, I think was really good in spurts and was really not great in spurts. And so if they get a little more consistency at the quarterback position, do you end up winning, 10, 11 games instead of 9? Like, yeah, that's probably fair. But again, like I don't see the world falling in the way that I think some people do in Tuscaloosa. Like, yes, if Alabama goes 9-3 again, which is crazy to say, like Alabama could go 9-3 in back-to-back years and they might be on the verge of firing a coach. But like, look, Kalen DeBoer is like a really good football coach. And I think like, I think it's, again, it's kind of the cliche of like, you never want to be the guy following the guy. And I think it's an impossible situation for whoever inherited this job. But I think, look, like Kalen DeBoer like built a national championship caliber team at Washington, which is a place that like has tons of history and is a really good football program. But like in this day and age is like a harder place to do that, right, than a place like Alabama. And so you add those things together and you look at it and say like, hey, it's going to take a year. You have to sort of reset what this looks like. And again, like I think if you're a coach and you're again like walking into the situation that he did, like, yeah, there's things that were amazing about Saban, but like you can't also just sort of cosplay Nick Saban at the same time, right? Like you've got to do the things that you feel like fit right for your program. And you look at how Alabama's recruiting over the last month. They've obviously picked up some serious big time recruits in the 2026 class. Now, obviously that doesn't help for this year, but I think like things have started to turn in the right direction. They've started to get things under, not necessarily under control, but moving in the right direction on the NIL front and moving in that direction. And I think you add those things together and like they're going to put together a competitive roster. Now, what does that mean for this year? I don't know. But like, again, I think it's a little, I think like it's really easy to get around the thing of like, yeah, it's hot seat season. Like, let's fire everyone and see who Alabama wants to hire. Right. But like, I do think that, you look at what Alabama was a year ago and it's obviously a tricky situation where you're sort of in a transition year, no matter what that was going to look like. And I think like if Alabama finishes in the top, 5 in the SEC, like that feels like a pretty good spot. Like if they end up 9-3 again, like I get it. People in Tuscaloosa aren't going to be happy, but I do think like that still sort of gives you a building block. And I know that sounds crazy to, again, feel like people need to fire a coach after going 9-3 in back-to-back years. But again, like the standard's a little bit different at Alabama, and right or wrong, I think it creates a really fun storyline for the rest of the year.
It does. And just one other thing that I think is going to potentially be a big difference this year is Ryan Grubb back reunited as well with Kalen DeBoer. So that offense and the way, like if you think about what we enjoyed so much about Michael Penix Jr. and that Washington team, it was the offense. It was the way that they moved the ball down the field. And that is a lot Ryan Grubb. So I'm fascinated by that. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. A 5th place finish in the SEC will be like the world is ending in Tuscaloosa, even though like that is right about where the cutoff point is for the CFP. Like we saw that 9-3 in the regular season was like right on the bubble for the CFP in year 1 of the 12-team era.